Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Professor Ming's Strategic Insights. In our last program, we talked about how the United States and Communist China perceive each other, how they compete, cooperate, and confront each other, and how they end up in a state what we call a Cold War 2.0. And the main reason for that, we concluded, is because the Chinese communists have a very different concept of history, or a view of history, which is fixed and very different from the rest of the world. Today, we're going to elaborate on this point. On my way to studio earlier today, I kept reminding myself, this is a very theoretical topic. But remember, you're talking to the general public instead of your PhD students in the classroom. So be simple and avoid being too academic and too theoretical. So let me try to do this. According to Karl Marx, that human society developed in a very different pattern. Long time ago, human beings were lived in what he calls a primitive commune society. And through millennia of ages, it gradually develops into what he calls a slave society. And again, through a long period of time, it evolves into a feudal society. Then the feudal society was replaced or followed by a capitalist society in which Karl Marx lived. But Marx was unhappy about this capitalist society. He envisioned and asserts that there will be a fifth and the last stage of human society, which is the socialist or the communist society. Karl Marx's arguments may sound complicated, but they will look simpler if you put it in a diagram. It looks like this. To begin with, there was this what they called a primitive commune society, then the slave society, then the feudal society, and the capitalist society, and the last one, the socialist or communist society. And there are several points I want to point out in terms of its implications. First is Marx asserts that once human society enters into this stage of the socialist or the communist society, it has reached the highest stage of human development, meaning there will be no more changes or evolution after this. Marx simply asserts that's the highest stage of human development. And before I forget, Marx did talk about another possibility, which is called the Asiatic societies. It evolves somewhere from here, and then it takes a different path. He used both ancient China and ancient Egypt as two examples, but let me not dwell into it. Okay, the second point I want to point out is that if we put the 5 stages of human society into this diagram, you'll notice it forms an upward curve. Primitive, slave, feudal, and blah, blah, blah. So it's an upward curve, and it's linear, except for that Asiatic society we just mentioned. And the reason to this is what we call progressivism. This is kind of rare in terms of view of history. It is rarely seen in Eastern or Western philosophy. But anyway, there's a reason to it. Marx lived and was active primarily in the 19th century. He was active beginning in 1830s, 40s, and then all the way to the 70s and 80s, which he called it capitalism, but we know it was the high time of Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution has developed 70, 80 years up to then. And prior to this Industrial Revolution, there was the Scientific Revolution, which made the Industrial Revolution possible. As we can see, the Industrial Revolution introduced new way of producing things by using machines and steamers. So it greatly enhances humans' capability to produce things. Furniture, houses, and then later on, cars, modern ships, and even airplanes. But anyway, let's put it in short. Even during the 19th century, the middle of the 19th century, when Marx was most active, he did witness this huge increase in humans' capability to produce things. So what he saw was an abundance in human wealth and human productivity. Along with that is a huge optimism. So this is where the upward curve is all about. Optimism beneath the whole thing. And that's the second observation. As for the third one, Marx argues the only reason that this societal change is possible is because of class struggle. In the slave society, Marx argued, there was the slave class, and there was the slave owner class. And somehow through their struggle, there evolved a new thing in the society which propels the society to move forward, then into the feudal society, then again into the capitalist society. And in addition to this concept of class struggle, there are two important factors which are attributed to this change of society, which are materialism and dialectics. Sometimes they're combined into one word, dialectical materialism. Now, here comes a big question. If this utopia of Karl Marx's socialism or communism is the final stage or the highest stage of human development, then how can we move into this utopia from this wicked capitalist society? Marx asserts that we have to have this world proletarian revolution marked here as a little red dot here. I'll explain it later. Before I move on, let me stress, for Marx, it's a very important concept. It is called, again, world proletarian revolution. And remember, it is a revolution. So why do we need this world proletarian revolution? Simple. It is because capitalism is unjust. In this capitalist society, the proletariat, or the working class, is oppressed, abused, exploited by the capitalists or by the property owners. So it is unjust. It has to be changed, and it can be changed only through a violent revolution. That's what Marx asserts. Despite of its significance, Karl Marx did not devote too much time into explaining or elaborating on this concept. And as we all know, Marx did not live to see the realization of this proletarian revolution in the world. But the concept itself lives on and has evolved into many different ideas. About 2 decades after Marx's death, Vladimir Lenin of Russia came along, and he picked up Marx's idea and develops the concept even further. Lenin argued, yes, there would be a class struggle between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. But Lenin also predicted that this class struggle might take the form of a world war, a war among the capitalist states or of the imperialist nations. To Lenin, they are synonyms. So when World War erupted in 1914, Lenin was so thrilled. He thought his predictions came true, although the result was a disappointment to Lenin, because the working classes of different countries, of the capitalist countries or of the imperialist countries, like Germany, France, or England, they did not unite as one class. Rather, they were all loyal to their respective country and fought for their own motherland. But Lenin did not give up the concept. After the passing of Lenin, Stalin came along. After the passing of Lenin, Joseph Stalin came along. Stalin basically followed Lenin's footsteps. He still maintained that this class struggle will take the form of a world proletarian revolution, but with a twist. He argued that this world war could erupt between or among the imperialist nations, or between imperialist nations and the newly born socialist state, namely the Soviet Union. So he introduced the idea of of a world war between two camps, the capitalist camp and the socialist camp. And that's for Stalin. Then we see the coming of Mao Zedong in China. He follows Stalin faithfully. He abode by the idea of world war, but with a new factor, atomic weapons. Mao said in public more than once that eventually there will be a world war between the capitalist camp and the socialist camp. And in the end, he argued, we will use atomic weapons. It will be no more than you throw atomic weapons at us, and we retaliate by atomic weapons. And in the end, half of the world population will be annihilated, and what's left will be the good guys only, the socialist people. We don't know why. It's a mystery, but that's how he argued. After Mao Zedong, the communist leaders around the world prepare for wars and then engage in arms races, but they seldom talk about the possibility of a world war. Communist leaders like Khrushchev, Brezhnev, or even Gorbachev, they were pretty much the same. But now things may be a little bit different, because in China we see the coming of Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping talked about unrestricted warfare, or warfare without bounds. We're going to explain the idea in our future programs. Very briefly, what does he mean by unrestricted warfare? He's thinking about the warfare with all kinds of weapons, conventional, nuclear, biological, or even chemical. You think it's crazy, but let me tell you, they are dead serious about it. They are preparing for war. But as for the nature of the war, we're going to explain it in our future programs. And this is how they teach their party members, how they educate them, how they indoctrinate them. It has formed a system of dogma. They've been brainwashed, it's rigid, but they really believe in it, and they are preparing for it. Okay, I think this is what I'm going to share with you today. I hope you like our program, and I'll see you next time.